Hey guys, it's Penelope in London. What I'm going to show you is the chart of today. I'm starting with my chart, and the reason is that if you go to astro.com and you put in your time, date, and place of birth, you'll be able to get your own chart. So see here, this is where this is from. So this is my birth chart, and the natal chart and the inner wheel is the snapshot of the heavens at your time of birth. So you do need your time so that you get your rising sign, and mine is 27 degrees of Scorpio. I'm just going to share my spotlight so you can see. So what we've got going on at the moment, we've got Venus that's a few degrees into the sign of Cancer, you can see here. So you got Venus up here and it says 2 degrees, so it's going into 3 degrees. So if we were to look at this on our chart, then we can see from, they've got the snapshot of the heavens at birth time, and then on the outside we have something called transits, and transits are where the planets are right now. Down here, what you have in this section are the aspects that are basically the aspects here on this chart. So this is just another way of viewing. Then you have the natal chart placements here when you look at this, and then you have the transit planets. So this is the natal and the inner wheel, and then this is the aspects, the way the planets speak to each other. And we have the houses as well, which are the areas of life. Aspects are really important, and then the houses, and then the signs when we're looking at a chart. And then we've got here, which are the transits. So as an example, the moon is currently in the sign of Aries, and it takes 2.5 days through a sign. So you can see that, that would be about 28 days around the chart. And then we have the sun, which is a year around the chart. My sun is here at the moment. It's going to be moving towards my moon. It's the sun is at 14 degrees, so it's moving towards my moon at the moment. So my sun will conjunct my moon in a few days. And Mercury is going to be moving into my 8th house. We've just got here, you can see that Venus is moving into my 8th house. So the sign, if we look at the Venus in Cancer, and then we'll move over to solar fire because I love using solar fire. If we look at Venus in Cancer, this is about our evolutionary needs and our values. So Venus is to do with our needs and our values. It's basically, covers Taurus, but also from the other end, Libra, which is to do with our relations and our relationships with others. But Venus in Cancer, we have a need for stability at home. We are looking for parental affection. So that parental affection could also be working with our inner child, because, we want to do our trauma work. It's also about emotional security, validation of the emotions, identifying with one's self-image, expressions of feelings, identifying others' emotions, and understanding the depth of others' emotions and where they originate from, and our own, and connecting to our roots. And also it's where we reflect on the past and things that feel good. So Venus in Cancer is, quite nice in my view. Then you would look at the house that's happening in for you. So that's actually going to be in a few degrees. It's going to be in my 8th house, and you can see my 8th house is up to here. So that will probably be for me in my 8th house for over a month. And we also know that you would also look to see what it aspects, as well. So it's not just one thing we're looking at when we're looking at an astrology chart, but also in the 8th house, that would be, although my 8th house is Cancer, we'd also be looking at the understanding of what Scorpio is. I'm going to change charts now because we've got Pluto. I'm going to show you where that is for me. Pluto transit is in opposition to Mars. So what would that mean? Let's go over to solar fire. I'm going to go to a new share. Let me do this. So I'm going to go new share, and we're on the emanated chart now, and I'm going to go spotlight. Okay, so right now the chart in the UK, this is the 5th of June, and or June the 5th, and I'm using universal time. What we have is that you can see that we've got the North Node currently in the sign of Gemini. The Sun has just moved over the North Node, and we've also got Mercury retrograde. So Mercury is heading backwards. And then we've got Venus, you can see in the sign of Cancer. So if we take this forward, let's just look how long Venus is in the sign of Cancer. I'm going to push the chart forward so we can see we're going forward by days, because Venus takes 224 days around the chart and it goes retrograde every 2 years. And you can see here that this is the 27th of June. So it's in the sign of Cancer for literally until the 27th of June. So that's worth knowing. And then it will move into the sign of Leo, Venus in Leo. That will be exciting for us. So now I'm going to go back to the 5th of June, June the 5th. And you can see here that we've got Saturn in the sign of Capricorn. We've got, Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. We've got Saturn in Aquarius at 13 degrees, which went retrograde a week ago. And that's going on until October, I think it's the 15th. I can't remember the exact date. We've got Jupiter in Pisces, which is just touched in. It'll get to 2 degrees and then it's going to go retrograde back into the sign of Aquarius as well. And then it will go back to, I think, to 22 degrees and it will remain there until the end of the year. And then it will go forward again into Pisces. We've got Jupiter we've got Neptune, forgive me, because we've got Mercury retrograde at the moment. So we've got Neptune in the sign of Pisces. We've got, this is asteroid Lilith, but I won't go into that. Asteroid Lilith is in Aries. We've got Chiron in Aries at 12 degrees. The moon is currently 15 degrees of Aries. We've also got Eris at 24 degrees of Aries as well. And then we've got here, Uranus is in Taurus. And we've got Lilith, Black Moon Lilith in Taurus. And we've also got the Sun is in Gemini, the North Node in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini. And then we've got in Cancer, we've got Mars, which will be leaving in I think about a week, looking at the degrees and the changes. So if we look at currently what's going on, if we see that this Pluto is in opposition to Mars. So I want to take you back in a little while, but I'm just going to explain at first that Aries Mars energy, but if we're looking at Aries and Mars, so really Pluto is related to Mars in many ways. Pluto is related to Mars, and so it's also to do with Scorpio. There's a relationship going on there between those planets. And then Scorpio is also Plutonic. So Mars opposition Pluto, which we can see here, which if I go one day ahead, you can see that it's 26 degrees, 26 degrees. So what does this mean to us? So Mars opposite Pluto, it gives intense passion. It's very strong desires. It's, our libido, it's our desire. And Pluto, but what the Mars thing, but the Pluto is also where we want to transform. And it's where we're very competitive. And also it's basically we want to achieve, and it's like we're going to battle. And it's an internal one. It's not always, outer. It can be very internal. And it can, so that we want to reach our full potential at this time. But clearly we're still going through certain things in society that are, where there's restriction. And the restriction is coming from the Saturn, which is in Aquarius. And it's, if you see, that's 13 degrees. And we've got Uranus, which is 12 degrees. So we've got this pull going on. But we've also got a nice trine. We've got a nice trine going here to Lilith at the moment. And when we look at squares, attention, and then, trines are more gentle energy, doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It could be lazy with a trine, but we do know that an opposition, something else is going on. So this is a very powerful energy, and it's very primal. And it's also to do with fight-flight response. So if you don't know what the fight-flight response is, when we've been through trauma, we basically can be reactive. So if we get triggered, we can be very reactive and to events that either we hear or that we see, or something internal in us. It doesn't have to come from outside ourselves. It can come from a long-term memory and maybe not feeling safe and things like that. So there can also be a sense of aggression with Mars, and also the wanting to dominate, but it's also where we transform, and it's also where we can achieve with the Mars. And it can be very physical, and it's also with Mars, we can be very creative as well, because it's a libido. I want to create something, the creation of life. And also it can be to do with courage and strength. And it's also where we can project, and where we're determined, we're projecting this sense of we're determined to deal with something. And I'm going to show you where this goes back to, that Mars, because Mars takes 2 years to move around the chart. And when we had the beginning of lockdown, we had Mars moved over Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn. And I'm going to show you. This transit also is about competition. It can be with others or a particular person. And it's also where we want to concentrate, maybe feel having a concentration of wanting to achieve our own certain goals and coming up against enemies or, resistance. So Pluto is where we resist as well. And what we resist persists, because Pluto is also to do with what's below the consciousness. So if you think of that iceberg, the picture that you might see where you have an iceberg in the middle of the ocean, but below that iceberg, there's a land mass. It's like much bigger. So if you keep that in mind. And then we've got the fight flight. So where we react. It's also very physical in nature, Mars. And it's also, where we can have violence with this placement as well. Not the placement, but the energy can be violent. So if we're not conscious, then we can, and we're sort of repressing stuff, and Pluto wants us to transform and Mars wants to move. So in impulsiveness, there can be actions or reactions that maybe that we're not keeping our cool. It's also where we can have powerful forces that are acting against us. So this is important that we see where this is happening in our own astrology, because for me, it's in my second house. Pluto's in my second house, and then Mars is in my 8th house. So the 8th house is to do with merging with others. It's to do with resources. And Pluto in my second house is also to do with my values and needs. So there's a push-pull going on. Then we can basically realize, sometimes in some cases, the realization that we're not able to just get on with it and succeed, that we have to hold back a bit. And we can, because it can take a lot of energy to transform our goals at this time as well, because of what's going on. And then also it could be that we don't want to go it alone and we need to enlist the help of others, and that there can be more success. And we don't want to be use coercive tactics, or we don't want to intimidate people or use threats, because that can backfire on us. And it's also to do with our sexual libido as well, that Mars. So, there can be dangers in abusing that, whether being overbearing, and also, the idea of that Mars is quite masculine in nature. So for me, also, if we look at Mars, it's about transformation and challenging our passions. And I'd like to read something from Jeff Wolf Green on this idea, evolutionary astrology. So Mars Pluto individuals have the capacity for total transformation or self-destruction. Of course, these two archetypal dynamics can cyclically alternate throughout life. So this is what's going on while this transit's going on. When it's negatively expressed, the Mars component can become intoxicated by its own egocentric and individual power as transmitted reflection of the separating desire of the soul. So Pluto is really the soul, and Mars is the libido of wanting to get something done, and not just sexual, as I keep saying, it's more than that. In varying ways, the individual refuses to acknowledge that anyone or anything is more powerful than him or herself. So when we do that, we're putting ourselves in danger. We have limitations as human beings. We've got the law of attraction and the ideas that we can do anything we want, but, we do have limitations. And in this reaction, if we refuse to accept our limitations, like the idea that I can do what I want and I don't care about the consequences, then it can be, if we're too willful in obtaining or actualizing whatever needs or desires we have, we may basically also challenge anyone who attempts to control or exert power over us, and where we feel threatened. So we can see that where that impulsiveness can come in and cause problems with that in Mars. And also Mars is in water at the moment. It's in the sign of the 4th house, which is, I wouldn't say the 4th house here, it's going to be different for each of us, but the 4th house is Cancer, and the 4th house is also the moon. The ruler of the 4th house is the moon. So, and the idea that Cancer is involved there, which is our security, our inner security and our inner needs. It's our roots. It's what's, unseen, our childhood. Reading on what Jeff Wolf Green pointed out was that underneath it all, the individual deeply senses the errors being made. At some point, the evolutionary desire emanating from the soul to transform and correct a situation will manifest itself as an undermining type of activity. It's basically where we can subconsciously set up situations or circumstances that will backfire. So whatever's going on at the moment, we want to make sure wherever it's working for us in the houses that it's moving through, is that we're not acting in ways that we're using our consciousness, and we're not doing things like being with impulsive that just backfire on us, because sometimes that will occur, that we may do something that will just backfire. It's also where, you know, there can be obstacles and that we resent having to deal with those obstacles. So life can be full of obstacles, and sometimes we can be resentful about that. The greatest challenge with the Mars-Pluto aspect is to align the personal will with a sense of higher will or purpose. And any resistance to this ultimate evolutionary need is based on the separating desires originating from Pluto that are transmitted to egocentric structures of Mars. So Mars is the egocentric structure, and the resistance is based on fears of losing control or being possessed or consumed by forces greater than the individual, and the sense of powerlessness that these fears can induce. So fear is when we have a sense of powerlessness. Ultimately, fear is when we're experiencing fear, we don't feel we're empowered or have power. So we need to check in with ourselves and know that we have power to some degree over ourselves and our reactions, and that also that with that we can align with a higher will. We have that choice as well. And when we're in tune, when we have this attunement to a higher will, it can be realized, and then we can make the progress that we want to make. So transiting Pluto is retrograde at the moment. We know that much. So we see that here. Pluto retrograde in transit is a regular cycle, and it lasts for 5 months a year. And it's where we basically can have a feeling of, you know, where we've been controlled or where there's been manipulation, and it's now a time to let those things go. So where we've either been controlling or manipulating, or others we feel have been controlling or manipulating us, it's a time when it's retrograde, where if we've either been too controlling or others, or situations, it's time to release those. This is also a time for, this is not a time for power tripping, but it's a time for eliminating when it's retrograde. And fated events and repeating themes will reinforce and show us our controlling habits, compulsions, addictions, or prejudices that need to be eliminated. So this is really beautiful to understand that with because Pluto is where retrograde is where we throw things off. I have Pluto retrograde at birth, and some people will have that because the reason is because it goes retrograde for 5 months a year. Also, we can be, you know, we can have suspicion with this and secrecy, and there can be things that hold us back from our spiritual evolution. So we want to look at those things and trust in our higher guide, and also know that, you know, we've got the ancestors behind us, and that we don't want to be destroying things that have just for the hell of it. You know, we want to gain sort of personal mastery. We don't want to just be going around destroying things. So then what we would do is that we know that Mercury is also retrograde. So we know that we're going inward. This is where we look at rewind, release, and review. This is the beautiful things about retrogrades. I enjoy Mercury retrograde myself. And what I'm going to do now is take this chart back and just show you. We're going to go back by months so that you can see 40. We'll see how many months ago that is actually, because I've got, you know, March as that. We're going to go take this back. So I'm going to go. This is June, and we're going to go back to December. So we're going to go May, and this is December, and Mars at the time, when we can see that Mars was in the sign of Aries, and also that was going, you know, that was being retrograde for a long time then as well. But we'd also got Pluto up here, and Mars was squaring down there. But if we go back again another 5 months or 6, if we go back to July, we can see that Mars was conjuncting Chiron at that time. And if we go back 1, 2, 3, and this is April, and this is May, March, February. So in February 2020, what we had is that, let's take this day, the 6th of February 2020, that Mars was just about to go over the South Node. So Mars is like a can opener. It activates things, it pushes things in a direction. So let's go weeks now. So we're going to go, this is 6th of February, and it's great to see this. And you can, you can do this if you have solar fire, you can do this on your own chart and see where it's going. So it moved over on the 27th of February, Mars moved over the South Node, and it was in opposition to the North Node. Then we're going to go weeks again. And as we go along, Mars, hang on a sec, we're going to go weeks. I didn't want to do it that quick. Let's go by days. This is more exciting. So we've got Mars at 16 degrees of Capricorn, and then it moved over Jupiter. See here? It moved over Jupiter, and it moved over Jupiter on the 23rd of March. So we know during that period in March, we had the beginning of the lockdown, and pre that, we had the Mars move over the South Node. Then we had Mars moved over Jupiter, and it moved over Pluto, and that was the 24th of March, thereabouts. And then it moved over Saturn. And also at that time, Saturn had just touched into Aquarius at that time. And there you go. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. And then it went over. So this is April. So between April 2020, it's taken a year to, and now we're in June, to get to that opposition. So let's go weeks ahead so you can really see what's going on here. So watch that Mars. You might have to follow it around the chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So around this time, we had the 2020, we had the thing going on with the Floyd situation in the USA. And it was actually May. But then we had a lot of people that were, this was confusing to people because Mars was in Pisces. And the idea is that, the idea of the martyr, and also, Neptune, it's where there's illusion and delusion. So remember that period, there were lots of people marching in silence, and there was a lot of marches and a lot of trouble going on at that time, but we can see what's going on there. And at that time we also had some squares going on, so the planets are all speaking to each other here. I don't know, if you don't know astrology, you might need a deeper explanation of this, but I'm just giving you an idea of Mars is the can opener. So it moved over Neptune, and then we have here, it then went retrograde. I think it began to go, I don't know if it went retrograde then. Let's see. Mars moved over Chiron. So Chiron is the wound. So that would have, that's the wounding. That was in July. In fact, that would have been 9 degrees, 10. It would have been on the middle of July. Chiron, the wound. We all felt very wounded then. It was very highly wounding because we were still in early days of the pandemic then. These were very early days, you think. I know it started in January, but really Italy locked down in March 2020. So we got March, April, May, June, July. So we were only 5 months in at this point. And then we had the big thing in America with the Floyd thing, which was very disturbing and caused a lot of uncomfortableness and was bringing up a lot of trauma for people. We've been through so much. Humanity has been through so much. Astrology is where we can look at the symbolism and begin to evolve and grow in our consciousness, because it's like we're talking, to each other. The planets are talking to each other. We're understanding the mythology, what it means, what the planets mean, what the houses mean. This is why the birth time is so important. And then if we keep going, there's so much to say on the chart, but I really wanted to concentrate on this Mars opposition because we want to watch ourselves over the next coming days. And we've also had a lunar eclipse just under 2 weeks ago. And now we're going to have a solar eclipse on the 10th of June, the 10th. We're having a solar eclipse. And we will understand how that's playing out for us as well as we look at our own chart and where these eclipses fall. So we've got a culmination when a lunar eclipse is a culmination, or it's the light being shone in a way. And then we've also got the solar eclipse, which is planting a new seed. It's a new fresh cycle. And if we go forward again, this is July the 30th. We're going to go 4 weeks ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then what we had was that Mars was then moving into, it was going to moving in towards Uranus as well. It moved over Eris, which is, Eris is to do the goddess of discord. And then we're going to go 4 weeks ahead again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And and it went retrograde. Mars went retrograde. It goes retrograde every 2 years. So let's go again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's still retrograde. And then it went 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's keep going forward. And then that Mars, eventually, if you can see here, watch my marker, Mars moved over. This was the 21st of January. So we've seen so much, we saw the elections at the end of the, November, December, and then we saw all of this, so if we keep going now, this is January, and this is February the 11th, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 11th of March, 1, 2, and then Mars moved over the North Node. And then that was that was the first of around April. If we go here, it would have been 25th of March. We've gone a week and then it's gone over. And 15th of April, then we got May, 20th of May, 27th, and then we got the 3rd of June. So literally, if I go now 2 days ahead, 1, 2, and we've got 3, and we've got this opposition. So we can see really here what we need to do is understand the energy that we're working with. If we look at the aspect of that, if we look at Mars, what is Mars? So Mars is in Cancer, which is about our security. It's going to be leaving there actually within the next week, which is going to be moving into the sign of Leo, which will be a whole new energy. I'll make another video about that. So if we look at Mars, which is the Aries energy, it's about separation, it's about anxiety of separation, it's about war, it's the loner, it's self, it can be violence, the sexual instinct, desires, our desire nature, our identity is freedom. Aries and Mars, it wants freedom. I want to do my own thing. It's the first house, first sign of the zodiac, of of a chart in traditional astrology, but it changes when we know our birth time. My first house is Scorpio. Then we've got independence. We've got where it's primal, spontaneous enthusiasm. That's the impulsiveness and libido. We've got initiation, expression of will, where we feel superhuman and special destiny, where we've got narcissism, self-interest. It's the warrior, pioneer. It can be sexual violence, destroyer, and paranoia. So then when we look at Scorpio, because we look at this Pluto up here and it's in Capricorn, which is about restriction, it's also retrograde, but Scorpio, and if we look at the Scorpio side, and the Pluto is about commitment, 8th house as well, it's fear of entrapment, it's shared resources, it's resourcefulness. So if we take a look at this from a collective stance, we can see how this is playing out. Resourcefulness, power, powerlessness, there's a lot of that going on at the moment. Magic, it's can be curses, manipulation, corrupt power. Loss, abandonment is where we want to merge. It's where metamorphosis, the alchemy, all that's taboo. It can be covert, secretiveness, sexual violence, phobia, paranoia. And we can look at intensity, fascination, and it's our psychology, and it's also destruction, and clearing the path, and fear of entrapment, betrayal, compulsions, obsessions, fear of vulnerability, and fear of intimacy. So this is an interesting time, what was going on. And we can see that Saturn is squaring here, which is a restriction. And we've got the retrograde going on. So if I go days ahead, how long is this Mars here for? So look, we've got a week ahead. It's been moving on in, it's been applying, and we've reached a crescendo as it does that. And then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then it moves into Leo. It moves into Leo on the 12th of June, and that will mean that it will be 4 degrees, but it's still in orb, which means that it's not very far away. And if we keep going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a week, 7, and then it begins to move off. And then we've got other stuff going on. And at that time, Mercury is still retrograde. How long is Mercury retrograde for? We go days. I think it's the 21st. It stations on the 22nd of June. And then it begins to go direct. And Mars then is moved on. Yeah, Mars has moved on. And then we will have Pluto opposition to Venus at that point. And then at that point, eventually Venus will then be moving into the sign of Leo as well. So we'll have Mars and also Venus in the sign of Leo. So that will be a whole new video and another chat. But I hope that's useful to you. Look at your own houses where this is going on. And then, I'll do another video on that. There's so much to look at. And thanks for watching. Any comments, do subscribe. And any comments or questions, leave them below. Catch you later. Thanks for watching.